So, in this episode of the Business Spotlight, we welcome Helen Wright, the founder of 923 Jobs. Back in 2015, I think it is, Helen identified a growing need amongst professionals seeking flexible work arrangements and employers that are eager to access top tier talent in more flexible and more adaptable ways. So, I think this has inspired Helen to create 923 Jobs, a company dedicated to connecting highly experienced individuals with businesses looking for innovative solutions to their staffing needs. I hope I got that description right, Helen. Welcome to the show.
It sounds a lot more serious than I think I thought about it at the time, David. But thank you. Yes.
how are you doing today? You all right?
Yeah, good, good. We've had a bit of snow this week, which has caused great excitement in our household.
It's a bit of a light dusting going around, isn't there?
Yes.
It would be great if you could kick us off by sort of telling us a little bit about what it is that you guys actually do, how long you've been running, and how big you all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a really personal journey for me. So my previous life, I suppose, I was a broadcast journalist. So I worked for people like BBC and ITV, reporting on news and current affairs. And then I was made redundant while I was pregnant. And that happens to tens of thousands of women every year in this country, even though it shouldn't do. But that happened, and I found myself having a career break. And we had three children quite quickly. And then when it came time for me to get back to the workplace, I was really kind of struggling to find anything that fitted in. And I was getting quite despondent actually, and I'd registered with various agencies. I thought living in North Oxfordshire, I could get into London quite easily.
Yeah,
Didn't mind working full time, but couldn't really find anything that either fitted in with the family or then paid enough to cover childcare costs. And it was very, very frustrating. And one afternoon, I was pushing children on a swing in my local playground, and I just looked around and I just thought, wow, I'm not alone. There was
yeah,
an accountant, an HR professional, someone who did PR for big law firms in the city, someone who was director of some big commercial corporate FMCG or something. People had big jobs, and we were all stood in the playground. And we all wanted to give back to the workplace, but we were really struggling to find those opportunities. And so I suppose at that time I just thought, wow, hang on a minute. We've got this group, and I can set something up to introduce this group struggling to find opportunities. Here we are in the booming Thames Valley. There must be businesses who are struggling to find the talent they need to grow and thrive.
yeah.
Let's bring those two together. And so that's when 9 to 3 Jobs was born. And I suppose at the time, back in 2015, it was really about 9 to 3 school hours. But a lot has happened in the last 10 years, not to mention a pandemic. So I feel that the whole I guess flexible working dialogue has come on in leaps and bounds. And it's not really just about the 9 to 3 anymore. It's just about flexible working.
Yeah.
And I could talk all day about that, David.
So do you think as the pandemic kind of kicked or pushed on that progress that was kind of already happening, so has it
Yeah.
actually sped up that progression?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, I reflect on conversations we were having pre-pandemic,
Yeah,
and the conversations would be we had lots of clients very open to part-time roles.
yeah,
Hybrid wasn't even, I don't think, spoken about at all. We might say, do you do any remote working, any work from home?
yeah, yeah,
And it might be, well, Sheila in accounts, she works from home on a Friday afternoon, but she has been with us for 20 years, so she's kind of earned that.
yeah,
Now we're finding candidates, not just mums, not just dads, but candidates across the board expecting hybrid working. And hybrid is now a part of our language, I think. And another word that's come about really post-pandemic is the idea of fractional work.
yeah,
So clients might look for a
yeah,
fractional FD or something like that. And so I used to say, there's a bit of a revolution at the moment, and we'd talk about flexible working, but it's not an overnight revolution. The
yeah,
pandemic came, affected my business massively. We had to reduce from a team of 14 to a team of two. We're building back up again now because I guess in some respects, the world of work is kind of the market's coming towards us. So there is a small positive there.
It's an interesting concept, isn't it? Because, like you say, there's a pool of talent, like you say, at the playgrounds. There's so much experience and knowledge in that. And back pre-pandemic, I think the sort of the corporate structure, for want of a better term, is quite rigid, isn't it? It's like, yeah, the job is a 8:30 till 5 o'clock or whatever the sort of times are. Whereas it's a shame really, but sometimes it needs something like a global pandemic to force a change, and then the benefits that come out of it is you recognise actually that flexibility, that hybrid working, that fractional working, all
It's
of that is it. Why didn't
it,
we do it years ago?
it's one of those things where you think back to when the 9 to 5 came about. It's, I don't know, people talk about Henry Ford and that kind of thing, don't they? And
Yeah,
factories coming about. But now, we're in this great technological revolution ourselves, and everything's so automated. It's really, in one way, scary, but in another way, really exciting. You can set off marketing campaigns and not even be present. So, do we need to do we need to value hours spent sat at a desk,
yeah,
or should we start valuing productivity and output? And do we need to pay someone full time for a job when maybe it's not a full time job? And actually, there are people out there who want full time jobs and they want that, and that's fine. But there are people out there who've got a lot to give and can add real value, and they don't need to be full time. Does that make sense?
it does, and I think it's got kind of there's a couple of things going on there, isn't there? Is that Maslow's hierarchy of need, giving people a sense of purpose, and actually having that flexibility to allow people to have a family and also contribute to their skills and their workplace. But the other part is that adaptability of an organization to be able to change. And, sort of Darwin said it best probably in terms of it's not the strongest that survive, it's those who are most adaptable to change. And
Yeah.
there's a fear, a lot of times there's a fear to change, isn't there?
Oh
Incorporate
gosh, yeah.
and things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. And some people are a little bit worried about embarking on that change, and I get it. I mean, we had an office and now we all as a team all work fully remotely.
Yeah,
Now, what that's done is it's enabled us to pick the best people to work for the business,
yeah,
regardless of geography, which is amazing. And it does open up a great pool of talent. And I think it's a great retention tool as well. But I remember, that's a big mindset shift as someone who runs a business. I can't see them. How do I know they're working? You know? And I get it. And what I always say to businesses is you've got to do what is best for your business.
yeah,
And we would suggest if you're thinking about making a big change, trialing it. So, this year, I think it was the beginning of this year, we saw the world's biggest trial of the 4-day week,
yeah,
where businesses were working 4 days but being paid full time. And they weren't committing to doing that forever. They were just trialing it to see how their staff handled it and to see how their clients handled it. And the outcome was that actually productivity remained the same or increased, which is remarkable. I've spoken to businesses who have done that and they've said they just work smarter,
yeah.
less faffing.
And it's a different approach from management. It's a different approach from leadership, isn't it? It's adapting those processes and those systems and those styles that get the
And
best out.
using the technology that's there. You know,
Absolutely.
everything
Really
is faster,
interesting.
isn't it? So,
Change is coming. Change is always happening, isn't it? We've got to adapt to that.
yes, yeah. And like you
So,
say, we need to be able to adapt. The most successful of us are able to do that, I think.
yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about you and your business for a minute. And you come from a broadcasting world, recognise that actually the transition to recruitment through the story you told us. What have been the biggest challenges for you as a business owner over the last what's nearly a decade?
Yeah, well, we'll put the pandemic in its own box, shall we, for the
Yeah, that's
business
kind of
challenges. Slightly unusual business challenge. I think for me, I was a broadcast journalist, and that meant that I'm, picking up the phone and speaking to businesses and saying, "Hey, do you fancy working with us?" That kind of call was fine because I've had to make quite, unpleasant calls. Hello, I'm sorry to hear your husband was killed in a nasty mining accident last night. Can I come and interview you?
yeah.
That's a bad call to make. So anything like that is fine, and the communication skills, I guess, are there. I think from my point of view, there were some very basic things that I'd never really learned how to learn how to do. I feel really silly, David. I feel like I shouldn't be confessing these things now on such a public platform. But I'd never made a PowerPoint. I'd never,
Yeah,
I don't know, email. I mean, I hadn't had any training and anything like that in a newsroom. It's very different. I could edit stuff. I could use a microphone, whatever, but it's very different skills. So that kind of thing. So what we have as an ethos at 9 to 3 jobs is just treating people as you want to be treated yourself.
okay,
And so that is something that, we bring through. So we treat each other as we want to be treated ourselves and the candidates and clients, and that's what we do. But, as we said before, always be learning, really.
yeah. Yeah, make you feel warm, safe, and welcome, and like you say, continuous learning. So I don't think you're alone in that sort of those. You know, PowerPoint is your example, but there's an awful lot of people out there that started businesses in the industry they come from, whether it's hairdresser, plumber, you know, whatever it is, and business in itself is its own job. There's kind of your industry, your knowledge, your expertise in that. When you start growing, getting a team, getting a bigger business, then business becomes its own sort of job and its own.
Yeah. And there are so many things about running a business that you don't realize as an outsider that happen. And that's one thing I love about recruitment because I talk to so many different businesses and I see how they grow and what works, what doesn't work. And every business is different, I think. But it's things like, I don't know, bookkeeping or marketing. Everything kind of is going on and everything's, learning. And I guess in the world we're in at the moment, there's a lot of change in all of these different areas. Um, but I love it. I think it's really fascinating just to see the growth of businesses.
So you've clearly made a success of it, and you've been through some challenging times, like you said.
Award winning, David. We are award
Award winning,
winning.
award winning. There you
Thank
go.
you.
So yeah, there's credit where credit's due there. What would you do anything differently if you had the opportunity to go back in time, step in a time machine, do it all again? Is there anything you do differently?
Uh, I thought about this because I thought you might ask me this, and I thought there are some things I think, oh, that was a tough time. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. But actually, I think there's great learning through
Yeah,
that. And so I probably wouldn't change anything. So um, anyone listening who owns and runs their own business might recognize it when I sort of say how hard it is to become friends with people you employ.
yeah,
So you naturally employ people I guess you like, and then that's a difficult relationship, sort of being the boss and then forming friendships. And that was a learning curve for me, I suppose. Um, and yeah, I just think, there are just learnings really to have from mistakes, and so
yeah.
that's why I'm quite positive about that.
It's a good point you say about the the boss and employee and things like that. I quite like to look at it as a way of the business is its own entity, and you're all serving the business, whether the role is the boss or whether the role is the FD or whether it's one of the team members. Ultimately, you're all serving the business for the roles that you're doing.
Yes, yeah, I don't actually ever feel like a boss. It feels quite an uncomfortable thing, but I guess the buck has to stop somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, somebody's got to make the final decision, haven't they? You mentioned about lots of going on, lots of learning, lots of change, and all that sort of stuff. How do you keep focused on the core? Because you're right, there's lots of distractions out there, isn't it? And it's easy to say yes to everything. So how do you manage your time, your productivity, and
Sure, I'm
keep
very good at
focused
that,
on?
David. I'm not very good at that. I'm like a magpie. I get all excited about everything. Um, but
I think a
last
lot of
year,
successful entrepreneurs are, aren't they? They're
yeah,
kind of
I
like
know.
let's do that, let's do that.
I'm very lucky. We've got someone brilliant in the team. She's been with us for a long time, and she is a very sensible lawyer.
Okay,
And she's a great example of someone I think a lot of small businesses wouldn't think they could ever find,
right.
in that she's an Oxbridge graduate, 10 years working as a lawyer, wants to continue, but doesn't want to work, 70-hour weeks. So we're very lucky to have an in-house lawyer who keeps us good on all things like GDPR and contracts and so on. But she is a great sounding board as well, because I am very much, yeah, we'll have a go at everything, and she's more
Yeah,
risk averse. So I'm
yeah.
very lucky to have Lou on the team. She's great for that. And I think last year I did a course which was called the Help to Grow course, and
Okay,
it was run by Oxford Brookes University, and
yeah.
it was funded by the government because I think the government recognised at the time there are 5.5 million small businesses in the UK, and
That's the backbone of the
we're the
UK economy.
backbone of business,
Yeah,
David, exactly. And so I did that course, and although I've been running the business for quite a few years, it was really helpful. And like you say, it did help focus me on different areas of the business,
okay,
and it reminded me that it's okay to work on the business. You
yeah,
don't have to always be working in it. And so that allowed me to take a step back, and we've been working hard recently on looking at things like the SEO of our website,
yeah,
which is perfectly functional. But do you know what? It can be better. And so for me to be able to take a step back and then talk to the team and work on making improvements like that has been really good. And
Do
another
you?
thing that I think I've valued throughout my journey, as an entrepreneur, businessman, whatever you want to call me, is the value of peer mentorship,
Yeah,
talking to others who might be in a completely different sector but are going through similar challenges. And I think that's a really
yeah.
valuable thing as well.
It's back to that business relatable thing, isn't it? You can be in a completely different industry, but somebody's going through exactly the same challenges being in business as somebody else going through those challenges. Yeah, just going to pick up on a little thing that you said about oh, it's gone. It's completely gone. No, it has literally just gone from my head.
That's okay.
It'll come back in a second.
I
So
can give you
T
some patches for that, David.
I've got so many thoughts going through my head. You mentioned about Lou coming on board and
Yeah.
being part of the team, being a different. So again, I think there's a lesson there that actually having different people as part of the team with different strengths helps to make the team a lot stronger, recognizing your strong points and recognizing their strong points and then collaborating together. What sort of advice would you give to other business owners that are looking to grow, maybe looking for their first hire, second hire, or maybe expanding the team?
Yeah,
What
they
sort
can give me a
of,
call, David. 93
what,
jobs, Helen at 93 jobs. There we go. We can help them through that
and
difficult process.
what sort of
Um,
advice would you give them in terms of what to look for to get the right team members?
yeah. And I think obviously this conversation we have a lot, and it's something we've been talking about as a team just this week as it happens, because we've been sort of looking at how much of our world these days is automated.
Yeah,
And yet, what is the most important thing within a team? And you'd often hear it's less of the qualifications and it's more of the personality fit.
yeah.
And so I think that's where humans come in when we're screening and talking to candidates. But what I remember saying, I was very nervous about making my first hire for 93 jobs. And you go from the kitchen table to suddenly having someone else helping you look after your baby.
Yeah.
And I phoned someone who was something of a mentor for me, and she just said, just go for it, Helen, just go for it. So that's the advice I'd give anyone. You reach a certain point where and you've got to start letting go a little bit.
And that's reminded me of what I was thinking of earlier. It's that
Okay.
sort of letting go bit. So did you go in that emotional sort of state of you were right, okay, I need to let go of some of these things and working on the business as opposed to in it? Was there any sort of like guilty emotions going on at the time? I should be doing more in the business as opposed to stepping back. I'm feeling guilty about not being
I
on time.
think, yeah, that's a really good point. I think you can go through that, especially we are a recruitment agency.
Yeah,
So, and I like recruiting, I like talking to businesses and talking to candidates, and I'm quite good at it, David.
yeah,
Um, and so if I'm not doing loads and loads of jobs and doing that recruitment, there was a time when I was thinking, oh, am I actually working though?
yeah.
And I've got to remind myself that actually, when you are building a team, you have to do other things
And
to
that's
ensure the success of the business.
that's kind of what I experience a lot, where people think that they need to be doing the job still and feel guilty not being on the shop floor, whereas actually you're dead right, stepping away, looking at that bigger picture, working on the longer term strategies is just as important as running
Exactly.
a business. Yeah,
And I suppose that's a gradual learning curve, but once the penny drops, you do
yeah,
feel that you are enabling the business to thrive
yeah.
rather than holding it back, I suppose. And you can still do some of the shop floor, like you say. I'll often have one or two roles that I am currently working on, but sometimes I think maybe I can't give those roles what I might be able to if I let one of the team do those roles. They'd be better placed to do it than me, and I've got to remember that.
And
Um,
ultimately, the team will be able to take the business further than you can ever do on your own.
yeah,
You need
yeah,
that team around you to be able to take it further. But it is easier said than done, isn't it? Letting go and
it is. Yeah, and we've spoken to people over the years who have sort of left businesses because they've felt that, their employer hasn't been able to let go quite enough. They're
yeah,
always checking everything. Um, yeah, it's hard, and I do get it because your business is a bit like your baby. But I'm very keen that this is. I've come through that, David. Shall I say? I've
good,
worked through that. I'm
good
out
for
the other
you.
side. I'm happy with how things are.
So Helen, what does the future hold for you guys then? Where you sort of mentioned you went through a difficult time with COVID, you're rebuilding. What's the
Yeah.
future look like? Where are you going with the business?
Yeah, well, we got rid of the office in the pandemic,
Yeah,
which was an obvious decision at the time because we weren't allowed to use the office and we had an early break clause. So we got rid of the office, and now we all work remotely. And I think I mean, I speak to a lot of SMEs and everyone's been saying in the last, say, however long, 12, 18 months, the economy is a kind of a little bit like this.
yeah,
It's a little bit of a roller coaster. And someone said to me earlier this year, they said, but Helen, that is the new norm. That is
yeah.
it. It's been like this for ages. That's it. And so that's what, you know, I'd rather it was just all on this kind of trajectory, David. It's not true. It's not going to happen though, is it? And so we've got plans to expand our team. At the moment, a lot of our clients are based sort of in Oxfordshire, Thames Valley, and London.
Yeah.
But we've got candidates across the whole UK, and so we're really passionate about helping them and then enabling them to thrive in and contribute to workplaces. So we'd just be looking to expand our team
Okay. Very
and grow.
cool.
Yeah.
Very good. So I think there's going to be a lot of people out there sort of watching these episodes thinking maybe not even started a business yet, that have kind of got that thought that actually I want to do something but don't know how, or have just started and at those early stages. What sort of advice would you give people out there that are thinking about getting started or have just started?
I just say go for it. Yeah, I am one of those people who always says you regret the things you don't do.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I would just say have a go. Have a go. And I'm sometimes reminded by my sister, who, I set up this business to get back to the workplace in a flexible way. And when it's your own business, it can be very all-encompassing and you
Yeah.
don't switch off. You have to remember to switch off, especially in the early days. And so my sister would always say, remember why you set up the business. Go and watch your kids play sport or whatever. Do
Very
go and
nice.
do that and don't just, yeah. So I guess have a reason for setting up that business. And I was struck recently by, I mean, there are loads of people who have got side hustles, loads and loads of people. And we'll sometimes help them find a job to run alongside their side hustle. And
Okay.
I read recently that I think it's 3/4 of the under 25s have got a side hustle.
Yeah.
It's just so achievable now. You can do it. So I just say have a go.
It's very much, yeah, absolutely. It's very much, it seems to be more prevalent now in youngsters that they want to go out and do business and be, my eldest is 18 and we've literally just started a company with him to go off and do what he wants to do because he's passionate about being his own boss and running a business. So it's doable, but like you say, it's give it a go, get out there, get stuck in
Yeah,
and
learn.
talk to people like yourself, sort of reach out and connect with other business owners because it's a great community for sharing. So
And
yeah,
I think most business owners, if I think, whenever I speak to business owners, if you just have a cup of coffee with them, you don't mind sharing experiences and learning
absolutely.
from each other. And that's great, isn't it?
Very different from the corporate world, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes.
Helen, I could talk to you all day. It's been absolutely fantastic having you on this episode on the Spotlight series. Thank you ever so much for taking the time out of your day to do that. For our listeners, where can they go to find out a little bit more about, you guys, your services, and maybe reach out if they need to?
Yeah, well, we're always happy to have a chat, just whether you're a candidate looking or your business looking to hire. Our website is www.923jobs.com. And they're the numbers, like 923 jobs, David.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much for your time. Appreciate it.